Good morning, everybody from Islamabad. I am Waqas Hassan, regional lead for Asia, and I'm really happy to be the organizer and moderator for this very important session on digital gender inclusion in Asia. Uh, this is a session where my wonderful panel of five brilliant females, we will try to talk about actions and not just words. Uh, this particular aspect of digital gender inclusion has been talked about much, not just in Asia, but across the world. Uh, but we're yet to see those kind of good tangible actions, particularly from the governments, where we can say that there has been a meaningful difference and there has been that kind of a strong commitment that has been made by government and the other stakeholders uh, to sort of showcase how digital gender inclusion is actually a priority for them and not just another issue. Uh, we also would like to look at it from a socio-economic perspective rather than just a socio-cultural perspective when we talk about digital empowerment of women. Uh, and for this particular session, I have with me five wonderful speakers. First, I would like to explain a bit about the session flow, and then we can have introduction of the of our wonderful panelists. So, what we will start off with is a presentation by Global Digital Inclusion Partnership on connected resilience. After that presentation, I'll turn towards the panelists for a quick Q&A, uh, and then we will turn towards the audience for their comments or their questions if they have any. So I'd encourage you to think about your question or the comment that you want to make, so that once we open the floor, we can have your input and your involvement as participants in this session. So to start off, I'll just like to introduce Ms. Onica Makwakwa. She is the Executive Director for Global Digital Inclusion Partnership and an experienced digital development professional working at the intersection of technology and policy to advance access to affordable and meaningful connectivity. As a gender justice and digital rights advocate, she has managed and pioneered various national and international campaigns, policy change processes for women's rights, civil rights, consumer rights, as well as media and digital transformation initiatives. She brings a strong sensitivity and unique perspective to the dynamics affecting women and other disadvantaged populations. Uh, then we will hear from Ms. Neeti Biyani. She is the Senior Advisor at APNIC Foundation. She is a digital development strategist and policy leader with a decade and a half full of experience advancing digital transformation, development justice, and transparency across the Asia Pacific. Her work focuses on shaping inclusive and resilient digital ecosystems that unlock socioeconomic growth and power communities across various contexts. In her current role, she leads initiatives that bridge the gap between technical expertise and policy imperatives. Then we also have with us Ms. Malahat Obaid. She is the Director for Economic Affairs and member of the PTA's Digital Gender Inclusion Committee. She has over 18 years of professional experience covering analysis of telecom sector with the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority, which is the telecom and internet regulator of Pakistan. She has conducted research on different telecom markets, technologies, and services, and she is responsible for the she's secretary to the committee on this gender inclusion initiative that PTA has, and she's also one of the key persons who are driving the implementation of this strategy at this moment. We'll get to know more about this strategy and what PTA has done during her intervention. Then we have Amrita Choudhury. She is the director of CCAOI and the chair of our APrIGF. Everybody pretty much knows Amrita. But thank you, Amrita, for being here. Uh, Next up, last one, we have Ruzan. Ruzan Sarwar is the public policy manager at Meta. And she will be talking about how platforms are making sure that digital gender empowerment is a priority action for them, being a key stakeholder in this discussion. So since we are on a clock here, and I'd just like to make sure that we cover as much as possible. So I'd invite Onica to please present the research by GDIP on connected resilience uh, and request the Secretariat to. Onica, would you like to share the slides yourself, or the Secretariat? Would you like the Secretariat to do that?
It might be better if they shared, since it's on their drive. Yeah.
Okay, so that's on the screen now. I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Waqas, and good morning, everyone from wherever you are connecting to. As my name has been mentioned, I'm Onica Makwakwa. I'm the Executive Director at the Global Digital Inclusion Partnership, where we do research to gather evidence for really being able to understand the divides, within meaningful connectivity more specifically. And so this research is called Connected Resilience, and it basically takes us through a journey of gendered experiences of women through meaningful connectivity during the global pandemic and beyond, as we are continuing to better understand that. So if I may have the next slide, please. Great. So the past meaningful connectivity reports that we have done really looked mainly at basic connectivity, right? And in the past, basic connectivity was really the main focus, because we were focusing mainly on access, getting people access to the internet. But I think many of you will agree with me that post-pandemic, it's no longer just good enough to be connected. We have to make sure that people are meaningfully connected, and that means going beyond basic requirements of connectivity. And by meaningful connected, we mean, they are connected to an internet that has an adequate amount of speed, at minimum 4G, that they have at minimum a smart device to be able to access the internet with. They've got the digital skills to be able to do the kind of things that can help empower and or transform their lives, but also that they have access on a daily basis. It is quite unfortunate that connectivity access at the moment, when you look at a connected person, is still defined as someone who uses the internet once every 3 months. And I think we can all agree that if you have a need for the internet on a daily basis, you should be able to have access to that. However, we find that even amongst those who are connected, women, by far too many, still are left behind in terms of meaningful connectivity, both on basic, but certainly on meaningful connectivity, we lose even more women in terms of access. Next slide, please. So this research on connected resilience actually helps us look and understand how are women using the internet, right? We are often told at times that people use the internet because they want to communicate with other folks or for entertainment for the most part. But also we know that for women, having access to the internet can truly be a lifeline, especially during the pandemic, where majority of the information about staying safe and being able to wade through the disease was available only by accessing the internet, to be able to make sure that they're keeping their families safe. And also that they're earning during that period when no one is able to work in your regular brick and mortar type workplaces. Next slide, please. So I'm just kind of giving you a brief overview of what connected resilience does, both in terms of, collecting the quantitative data to understand how deep the divides are, but also the qualitative data by getting into the stories of exactly how are women in different villages, in urban sectors, in different locations are using the internet, and how they are affected by not being meaningfully connected. And so as you read through the report, which I welcome you to please download the report on our website, you will come across the story of Alona in the Philippines, who is based in a rural area and is basically low-income household dweller, as well as an informal worker and a single mother. So for her, being connected means everything, means, it makes a difference between whether she's going to be able to support her children or she's not going to be able to support and feed her children. Next slide, please. And is able to use her connectivity by being able to tap into a program that is run by the Department of ICT in her country, where she's gaining some critical digital skills and is able to connect with other entrepreneurs and get access to market. So let's just kind of take a picture of her, because she's most of the time, because of her being in a rural place, means that she's often disconnected or does not have steady connection or the adequate speed. And this to her is truly a lifeline. It makes a difference between whether she's going to be able to make a bread and butter decision or a decision to use her limited resources to purchase data so that she's able to stay earning to be able to support her family. And so this is just one example that I want to give us. If I could have the next slide, please. One example that I want to give us in terms of just really how women in rural areas as well as in urban areas, quite frankly, are challenged when they are not able to have the access to the internet. And we can agree, I think, that being connected to the internet is no longer the luxury that it used to be in yesteryears. It truly is a lifeline for many women that we encounter. And there is actually a financial cost to this lack of meaningful connectivity. In 2023, when we did the study, we actually calculated the economic cost of women not being meaningfully connected, that most middle income countries are losing close to $500 million US dollars in their economies by having women operating outside of the digital economy. I'm going to ask the organizers to share the entire PowerPoint presentation with you, because I don't want to go through all of the slides, but as you can imagine, it's really taking you through a journey of just at the personal level how this impacts. What I want to do is to just share some highlights on what are the opportunities that we are missing out by not making sure that women are meaningfully connected. We are missing out on making sure that women also contribute towards the economy, but also are able to access education, health, and those kinds of things that can help truly transform their lives. We actually, through the study, identify some opportunities that we can begin to close this gap by focusing on women specifically, because at the moment they're the most disadvantaged in inclusion. And that requires countries to actually be willing to make deep investments, as well as private sector, to make deep investments in women, to actually have grand visions about our universal service and access funds. We know these funds exist everywhere, but we really have not tipped the scale in terms of just what they can truly achieve. And there's some easy wins as well that I'm hoping that we will get into with the panelists later on, to talk about what are the easy wins for us to be able to close the divide by focusing on women more specifically, and what are the scalable systems that exist in each of our countries that we should be exploring to be able to close this divide. I thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to having a fruitful conversation with you later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Onica. Thanks a lot. I think what you just mentioned at the end was a sort of a clear way forward on how we can bring about this digital empowerment of women by following these 4 steps, and also the fact that countries have lost almost $1 trillion and are set to lose another $500 billion in the next 5 years makes it a very compelling case for the governments to step up, and for that matter, all the stakeholders to start taking tangible steps. And talking about tangible steps, I think we can start off this conversation with Malahat. Uh, Malahat, so PTA did step forward, and it made a difference by developing the digital gender inclusion strategy. Uh, and I think we did see a big drop in the digital gender gap of Pakistan last year, which was, I think, persistent for about 3 years. Uh,
Yes.
but now you're in the implementation phase. So, what are the key challenges and insights that you have learned during this particular implementation phase? Thank you.
Thank you, Waqas. Just to before I go into the implementation implementation issues that we have faced over a period of time of almost a year now. I would just like to give you a small background. Pakistan digital gender inclusion journey started from a very difficult place, actually. 2017-18 was the time when we realized that things are not as good for Pakistan in terms of digital gender inclusion, where all the international rankings were showing us that, we are dropping, the women are nowhere in the digital scene. So the government took a step forward and we decided to have something which a proper legal framework, or for that matter, some strategy that could, address this issue. So in 2022, we started with the Gender Inclusion Initiative at PTA, and we came up with this strategy in 2024. We launched it in MWC Barcelona in 2024, and then the implementation started in 2024 August. So the strategy, when we built it, it was an extensive consultation that we did across Pakistan to identify all the barriers and issues that women are facing when they are adopting to, or they are trying to adopt to digital. So we got a number of barriers that came out, although there were a number of researches already carried out, but we wanted to have the real picture from the grassroots. So the barriers that we got were then translated into the strategy in the form of working groups to address each barrier. So we started off with the access group, then the affordability was major issue that was highlighted, the device affordability, as well as the internet cost. Then we had a major issue of data. We did not have any data available. So for whatever we were collecting was so fragmented that you could not make out how many women are there online and who are supposed to be included as our objective or as our target women to address the gap. Then we have this digital skills group. Then there is an inclusion group, which actually works on changing the perception of the overall society, which unfortunately prevails in this country, as women should not have access to internet because they don't need it. So we had to change the perception. And then the last group was safety and security, which will be ensuring that women should stay safe online. So once the working groups were, established, we had this, under the strategy, we have this technical advisory group as well. And there is a steering committee, which is leading, or actually the governing body of all those working groups. So the strategy was rolled out. The steering committee was formed, Minister for IT and Telecom, which is fortunately a female as well and has all the excitement and compassion to work for this cause. So we started off with it, and then the technical advisory group, which includes all the international organizations who would be helping us in rolling out the strategy. So while the first meeting of the steering committee happened and the working groups were identified, and we thought that everything will be rosy and we will just start working as we thought and as we planned. But actually, 4 or 5 months down the lane, we did not achieve what we thought we could in just maybe a couple of months. About just activating the working group, where we would, one working group would have members, and then there is going to be a lead organization, which is going to be a government organization. And then, they will start with, we had already identified terms of reference on in the strategy, but we wanted the working groups to work on their TORs so that, they could be specifically worked out TORs for every barrier that we are looking at. Unfortunately, the working groups took their own sweet time because they were, they were led by the government organizations. So we had a lot of dependence on the other entities. And of course, there was overlapping of jurisdictions as well. Let's say if we are talking of a simple one, let's say if it was a safety and security, in Pakistan, there are two, we gave lead to Human Rights Commission for our safety and security group. But then there was an overlapping of National Commission on Status of Women, which also works on safety and security of women. So there was an overlap, and they said that this is going to be our agenda, and they shouldn't be doing it, or we should also want to do it. So we wanted to, make a strike a balance where, instead of deciding whose jurisdiction is it, they should be, synergizing and moving forward. So this was one area where, we had this issue of defined jurisdictions of work. Then, the government organizations, like we had given a lead to Pakistan Bureau of Statistics for our data group. Then we gave lead to affordability to the Ministry of IT and Telecom, Ministry of Education for skill development. All of them, of course, have their own agendas and own priorities as well. So bringing them to prioritize gender as their area of work was quite a task. We had to, engage with them. We had to tell them that unless you make it a priority, unless you start working, unless you start your working group and started discussing with the stakeholders, we won't be able to activate this group. So somehow, making their priority, gender as their priority was, an uphill task. But finally, thanks to Almighty, that we could manage somehow. There's just one group which has very recently, this month, they have the group which is
Sorry, is it me or is Malahat actually just froze?
No,
Yeah,
Malahat
yeah,
has written.
she did. Yeah, okay. Well, I think she has covered a lot about the implementation challenges already, and I think she just dropped out maybe. So I'll come back to the things that she has discussed. But for now, in the interest of time, I'd like to move towards Ruzan, because we just heard from the government, so it would be ideal to just heard from the private sector, from platforms as well. Uh,
uh,
so Ruzan,
sorry.
I think, as you know that social media, I mean, Meta is one of the biggest, not just social media, but a digital overall digital platform now. Um, how do you see Meta prioritizing safe cybersecurity protocols and other actions that you take to make sure that the women have feel empowered when they join digital platforms?
Thank you, Waqas, and thank you for providing me with the opportunity to really dive into sort of the steps that Meta has taken to address women's safety online. And I do want to note that Meta takes women's safety very seriously. And just to sort of lay that foundation, one of the priorities that we have when it comes to women's safety is broad collaboration with different stakeholders. And so, sort of the individuals that are represented on this panel, government, civil society, think tanks, academics, industry, it's necessary for us, and we have seen this through our experiences, that in order to create risk mitigations for the issues that women face online, it can't just be industry, it can't just be Meta, it has to be sort of an all-round effort. And so, just to set that as the baseline and then address specifically what Meta does. And there are a couple of, I mean, there are a number of things that we do to address women's safety online. And we try to take as comprehensive an approach as possible to make our platforms safer for use. And this includes, writing clear policies that are also able to cover the widest range of our user base, right? Because as you know, Meta has roughly 4 billion users across the world, and being able to craft policies that cover as many of our users as they possibly can is definitely a significant challenge that we try to address. We also engage with experts, whenever we feel as if we don't have the level of expertise necessary to address a risk mitigation, we always consult with experts. And it's an ongoing process. We do this regularly where we have stakeholder engagements and roundtables to bring certain issues to our, innumerable experts so that we're able to obtain the most accurate information possible. And uh, this isn't even touching on sort of as a tech company, the tools that we have to address, online safety and specifically women's safety, right? This is in addition to sort of our internal teams of engineers, researchers, data scientists, content reviewers and policy teams like, the team that I'm a part of, to figure out just how to address such an onerous and yet such a pervasive concern. I can talk about our community standards and guidelines, but I feel like most people are aware of what they are anyway, at least to an introductory level. So I think, I'm going to highlight one of the most significant tools that we do have. And that is actually on the tech side of what we do. And also highlights the sort of how collaboration across different stakeholders creates a really powerful initiative to be able to mitigate the risk associated with women's safety. And this is a tool that, we were one of the first companies to really, dive into this tool, and it's called stopncii.org in conjunction with the UK Revenge Porn Hotline. It was launched, the work preceded it, but it was launched in 2021. And essentially what this tool does is that, I think an issue that disproportionately affects women is the sharing of non-consensual intimate imagery. And this is something that we realized was a significant issue. And what we did was we helped build a tool, helped build and fund a tool that basically, women who are over the age of 18, individuals actually over the age of 18 can, put in a photo that they believe may be shared maliciously that depicts intimate imagery. They can share it to this tool, and the tool will create a unique hash that then gets uploaded and shared into our systems, with us, with Bumble, with a number of different industry partners, so that, this particular image, our detection capabilities will be able to tell if someone is trying to upload the image and prevent it, right? So, we don't store the image by any means. Like the hash is what is shared. And so this tool has been utilized, in context that I have directly been a part of, to sort of safeguard on the public figure side, sort of women politicians and parliamentarians from having really damaging images be distributed. So, that's one of the strongest tools that we have. We also have things like moderated assist, which aid in sort of filtering out comments that individuals would find offensive. And I think, I can keep going, of course, but I think I would really like to understand from the audience and see what the concerns are. And I can go into more detail as well, but this is, I did want to highlight one of the tools that we've been working on for many years now that has proven to be quite effective in terms of how we address women's safety online. And this is in addition to our policies and sort of our normal review processes as well. But all of this to say is that it couldn't have happened without collaboration across stakeholders. And I think that forums like this are really important in terms of, building those collaborations and taking them forward. And I hope that, we can have a productive Q&A session afterwards as well.
Thank you, Ruzan. Thank you. Like you just said, this is something which we really can go back and forth on this tool and how and the other means that Meta has. And I think the, the few of the tools that you have just mentioned, of course, depict that there is a clear approach of by Meta on how to make women safe online. I'll probably come back to you with with a follow-up question, but for now, I'd like to turn uh, towards Neeti. So, Neeti, when we were having conversation about this session, you remember we spoke uh, about digital gender inclusion as a socio-economic issue rather than just a socio-cultural issue, right? It has significant financial impact and it has economic impact attached to implication attached to it. But one of the most important things to have financial empowerment is to have the skills and tools to earn and to make positive use of internet. Um, so how do we come these digital capacity building challenges, and upskilling of women, so that we ensure that they have the means to be financially empowered as well. So from APNIC Foundation's view, I'd love to have your perspective on this.
Thanks, Waqas. Thanks for that. So I'm very, very proud to be on this extremely stellar panel today. So thanks to GDIP for curating this conversation. The APNIC Foundation, if I may just introduce ourselves for exactly 10 seconds, we are an internet and digital development organization, and we serve across 56 economies in the Asia Pacific. And inclusion actually lies at the heart of all of our efforts. Through our interventions and our experience in the Asia Pacific, what we've realized is that questions of representation, inclusion, questions of actual meaningful participation in the digital economy, and it's rapidly expanding and growing, and it is an extremely dynamic landscape to be a part of, is a complex, nuanced issue, and it is not something that can simply be sort of plug and play, that you provide connectivity and you provide access, and then the issue solves itself. The question here is one of participation and agency, I feel. So it really depends on whether women, and the APNIC Foundation in fact works with women and gender diverse individuals as a community. So the question remains whether this community can meaningfully uptake, participate, use the tools and the technologies that are at our disposal today. And that is something that I'd like to speak to today. So if the question is about representation and agency, I think what we need to do collectively as various stakeholders is probably not to speak on behalf of women and gender diverse individuals, but in fact pass the mic. And what that tells me is that the design of our solutions and our interventions must have the communities that we want to serve and we want to represent at the heart of how these solutions are defined, designed, and deployed. So what that led us to do is basically intervene in the 56 economies in our service region through community-oriented solutions that are rooted in, respond to, and are able to serve the needs of the communities that stand to benefit from the interventions that we support, either through ourselves, through the programs and projects that we run, or the investments that we make, or the resources that we channel into these economies, or whether in fact it's the partnerships that we have across the region, right? And I'll quickly maybe draw everyone's attention to a few interventions that we've made that have truly had beyond just upskilling and providing economic opportunities and the opportunities to be able to benefit from the internet in an economic manner, but really be able to bring the internet forth as the great equalizer that it was aimed to be, that it was, designed to be. So our longest running grants program, in fact, the Information Society Innovation Fund, has over the last almost 2 decades supported interventions that required digital solutions or internet-based solutions to very real-world problems, whether it's education, health, nutrition, climate change, addressing issues that people with disabilities or persons with disabilities actually live with. And some examples that I'd like to draw our attention to is that in Myanmar, in fact, we supported young women to gain technical skills and leadership roles in the ICT sector, and it included mentorship, training, community building. In Pakistan, we had a project that drew a lot of recognition, that utilized mobile phones for tracking and preventing disease outbreaks, which had a focus on improving women's health, especially in remote areas, in rural areas. We've supported maternity mortality monitoring, through our projects, and supporting, in fact, technical communities, industry leaders, internet industry participants to be able to climb through the ranks, to be able to progress in their career in a field that has so far been dominated primarily by men. And I want to maybe speak to that initiative that we have maybe for about a minute before I pass the mic back to you, Waqas. So the APNIC Foundation actually has a long-running program called Switch, where we support women and gender diverse individuals across Southeast Asia to be able to design and develop their own personal development programs. And this is an annual program where we select a cohort of about 150 participants from across Southeast Asia. In my knowledge, I don't think any other program like this exists, where women and gender diverse individuals identify what their career needs, what their development needs, for them to be able to grow in their career, further their employability, further their opportunities, and actually meaningfully contribute to not just their industries, but also their households and societies at large. So far, we've been able to support about 600 participants across Southeast Asia through our Switch program. And I don't even think that I have the numbers at hand for people, especially women, that we've been able to support through other efforts like grants and partnerships. But all in all, I would just like to say and conclude with this, that I feel like digital inclusion, or rather digital divides, this is not an issue that one stakeholder or one stakeholder group can meaningfully address. And which is why I think I will leave with a call to action, that I feel like we need to collectivize our impact and we need to collectivize our interventions to do two things. The first is to avoid duplication, right? We all operate across an extremely diverse and if I may say difficult region, right? With the amount of diversity we have in the remote areas and dispersed populations that we have, but also to be able to make sure that we are meaningfully addressing the gaps that persist and that continue to threaten equitable development across the region. And in this collectivization of impact, I think we will be able to serve the communities and the economies that we so want to as part of our collective agenda. So that's a little bit about the initiatives and the interventions we're supporting. Back to you, Waqas.
Thank you so much, Neeti. I think the Switch program, the highlight probably of your intervention is something that I think the other organizations can also take a note of, rather than telling the women or other genders on what they need. It is better to understand what they need and try to tailor your digital skill efforts around it. And you did speak about, you did end on a note on about all stakeholder efforts. So I think that would be a perfect time to bring Amrita into the conversation because of her diverse hats that she wears. She has that kind of an exposure to a multi-stakeholder environment. So Amrita, what do you think? As I think we would all agree with Neeti as well that it requires an all-stakeholder effort to bridge the digital gender divide. But how do we bring it about? What actions do you think we need to take to make sure that all stakeholders can come on board and talk about it?
Thanks, Waqas. Great question. We'll not solve world problems today, but let's take a dig at, seeing what are the things which can happen. So there are a few things, and I agree with what Onica, Neeti, and the inspiring stories which Malahat had shared, and even what Ruzan shared about what platforms are doing. Now, one of the first things is that there is a gender digital divide. It is there, it is persisting, it is growing. The tech divide is growing. Two, governments and other stakeholders also acknowledge this problem, that there is an issue and they need to act. That's another reality. The third is that there are initiatives which are on, but it is not, they are in silos. Everyone wants to do their piece, but they are not sewn together into a story. Three, if you're looking at platforms, they're trying to do their bit, but the issues are so large and so they are so huge in their volume. It's very difficult for them to also work on each issue, especially when the cultural sensitivities come in, the languages come in, and the physical world behavior of men coming in online, and their emotions or the way they kind of I would say bully women is magnified. I would say those are cultural things which come online. So these are issues which are there, and if you look at it, regulators are trying their best, be it in Pakistan, be it in most of the Asia Pacific countries, or even in Africa, they're trying. But the challenge is, even when the policies are being made, they need to be inclusive. For example, in a government, you may have the telecom regulator coming up with certain rules. The Department of Telecom is trying to do something. The Ministry of Health is trying to do something, but they are not speaking to each other. So what happens, and I'll take an Indian example and speak, is very recently the telecom regulator in India came up with a paper consultation on digital inclusion. And they talk about various things. It talks about access, it talks about enhancing affordability of devices, digital literacy, addressing gender and social divides, supporting small entrepreneurs, etc. But the challenge which even they discussed was that we have regulations, we have several regulations, but we need to identify the gap. What is the issue? Everyone knows. But what are the issues in those policies which needs to be addressed and can work together is a challenge. If you look at the USO funds, it is flawed. And we had another presentation by APNIC Foundation yesterday that it's not working in most of the places. The money is not going where it should be. Similarly, there are platforms like Meta and others who are trying to build capacity within, say, women, etc., on how to use safe surfing, etc. But these initiatives, when they're having them, are with certain select partners and they are in silos. Similarly, government wants to do certain things, but they are in silos. It doesn't grow. You have to ensure that these I would say initiatives work together so that there is no silos. What Malahat shared was nothing but intergovernmental or inter group issues which comes in, which stops even a great initiative from going. So I think those are certain things which are important. And obviously, it's just not connectivity, as Onica was mentioning, or laying the cables. It is, the meaningful connectivity which matters. And I think another thing we cannot forget, what Neeti was saying, is the basic social or the cultural barriers through which even Malahat shared that women have to push through. In a house, there may be one phone, the woman may not have the phone. So how can we make it more affordable? Can we have more refurbished phones coming? So those are certain conversations which should happen. And also the safety online. Like, for example, Ruzan was sharing a lot of efforts which, say, Meta is doing. But what about people who are women who are in remote regions? How do they mitigate it? How do they even know how to go into these platforms and raise their issues? It's quite complicated, I must tell you this. Not everyone knows it. If you look at India, for example, there's a huge financial scam going on these days over phones, and that's a concern which government is trying to kind of tap. That is even stopping women from going online to do business. Because as Onica mentioned, this helps a lot of women to sell products, etc. online. That helps to empower them. And if a woman is empowered, the whole family gets empowered. That's a fact. It's just not, the children also get empowered. So I think those are things which needs to be looked. And are there relevant content for women online? Can they safely post things online? That's something which we need to look at without being judged. And can they have access to language and content in their own language? That's important. If we want an inclusive digital, I would say Asia Pacific, which is gender inclusive, we have to look at all things. It should not be men in the room sitting and deciding what women should have and should not have. Many times the regulations which are made are very protectionist. That, okay, this is the issue, so women will not do this. That's not how it has to be. You have to create that environment where women can have a voice and can do it. If you look at Afghanistan, the internet was stopped because they want a moral policing to happen now. Is that something which we would really want? Sorry, I brought it up, but that's also a concern in gender inclusion. And I'll end it here.
No, thank you. That's okay. That's okay. I was just trying to open the mic because we have almost like 13 and a half minutes left. And I have to come back to Onica as well. And Onica, we have heard about how governments are trying to either develop something or strategy or a policy around digital gender inclusion, or if they have developed it, they are now facing challenges in its implementation. So, from GDIP's perspective, what could be some of the principles that they can follow kindly in a very quick intervention so that we can go to the audience for the Q questions and answers. So what are those principles that they can follow? Thank you. Sorry, you're on mute, Onica. You need to unmute yourself first.
There we go. So first things first, we can't count what we don't, we can't fix what we have not counted and what we don't know. So gender segregated data is really critical for us to truly understand how deep this situation is and how it manifests in different groups, be it women, people with disabilities, gender, diverse populations, rural, urban. We need gender segregated data in order for us to really understand the gender digital divide better. And that's one of the things we are trying to accomplish with Connected Resilience, not just by doing it ourselves, but also partnering with local organizations in each of the countries where we do the study. So they are empowered to actually be a part of that. And that brings me to the second thing. And that is, and I think Neeti spoke to this a little bit, and that is the importance of designing with and not just for women. Making sure that we are taking a multi-stakeholder approach where our solutions, our ideation includes women at the center, especially if we are trying to bring them into the fold as well. So gender responsive policies will, be one way, but they need to also include women in that strategy as well, alongside with the multi-stakeholder. And let me just say one thing that Amrita just mentioned that's really, really, really important is that, we have to also ask ourselves, we want women to go online to do what exactly? If everything online is in a language that is not the language that they speak, right? So content is really important important and a big part of the digital economy at the moment. So making sure that we are also developing relevant content. The framework that we developed at GDIP on gender inclusion is called the REACT framework, which basically says that we have to have an approach that puts rights first. So it has to be a human rights-based approach to bring women into the internet. So rights is the first word. The E is for education, that we have to focus on education, reskilling, and making sure that women have the right tools to be able to be part of this digital transformation is really important. And we have to make sure that it's accessible and affordable. And I think Amrita also brought the issue of affordability of devices. It's not just affording to be on the internet. We have to be able to have the right tools to be able to be there. And then working on content, which is the C. Content is really important. It needs to be relevant. It needs to also be in a language that we are speaking. And the last one is T, which means that we just have to set targets. You know what I started, what we are not going to track what we have not actually measured. So we have to set realistic targets and give ourselves time bound. We are staring at the SDGs 2030 in 5 years and feeling very far behind. So we have to begin to set very realistic timelines that we check in on and make sure that we are moving towards reaching those goals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Onica. I think the approach which is mentioned in React framework speaks to how the governments can take advantage of this particular framework, which is public available, and devise policies around it. Well, we don't have much time left, and I do see a question in the chat. I don't see hands for now, so if you want to take the mic, please do so. Irashu Karki is talking about Meta's takedown policy for health educators and medical professionals, and she basically is asking for Ruzan's take on this. Ruzan, if you've been able to read the question in the chat, would you care to respond to it, please?
Apologies, I can't actually see the chat.
Oh, you can, but
yeah.
let me just
Sorry.
let me just read out to you for read it out for you then. The question is that it has been reported that across Meta platforms, health educators, medical professionals, and sexuality educators are being flagged, shadow banned, or removed for posting medically accurate content about women's sexual health and pleasure. And while videos catering to the male gaze aren't treated with such harsh consequences, this is such an unfair censorship can hinder women's rights to get reliable information. How is your take on this, and how is it right to censor this kind of content?
So yep, thank you for that. So I will say that, just off the bat, without looking at the actual piece of content, it's very, very difficult to, assess and make a call on what sort of enforcement actions, if any, were conducted on it, right? I think for Meta, we do try to be as equitable as possible when we are, assessing content against our community standards. At the same time, I think we're very clear that we are not perfect, and that when, you're dealing with something like content at scale, it is a question of constantly improving our detection capabilities and enforcement capabilities, right? So if someone has an issue with the enforcement action that was taken on their content, there are in-app reporting mechanisms that can request re-reviews on that content. Aside from that is flagging it to one of our specialists, myself, other individuals, and I know who work at Meta, and I know this is not a particularly efficient solution, given that not everyone has access to a Meta employee. But if the user reporting is not effective, or an individual still has questions, then they do have the ability to flag it to to us either directly or through one of the partners that we work with. If it's related specifically to non-consensual intimate imagery, that would be the UK revenge porn hotline, and they are always really helpful in answering questions from users. But again, without looking at the content itself, I can't actually, say whether it was correct or not in terms of enforcement.
Thank you, Ruzan. I think that you provided a good response to this particular question. There is another comment I would say by Suhasini Shrestha, and she says that we are talking about men and women, but there are people with different gender identities. How can we make the digital platform safer for them, as they are more vulnerable groups? And I would probably add personal disabilities in there as well, So I think I'd just probably request Onica to take on this question then.
Yeah, certainly. And thank you so much for bringing that up. I think this is something that we are continuously learning, right? There's a phrase I love from the disability groups that says, nothing for us without us. And I think that truly needs to be an approach that we by looking at the most vulnerable, and that they're not a monolithic group, right? So that we are designing with their voices, informing our strategies as well. So I totally agree with that, and would encourage us to continuously question our positions, our strategies around how are we making the spaces safer and welcoming and inclusive for everyone, in a way that also empowers them to speak out for themselves too.
Thank you, Onica. Yes, I think that's pretty important. Now, I have exactly on my screen about 4 minutes left. And so I would request each of you to, just give a 30-second closing statement on the topic. Start with you, Amrita.
Okay, I think we need to be engaged, fight for what we want, and keep it going, I would say.
Thank you. Very brief. I'm sorry, I lost power here actually, so I'm using my phone. Uh, Onica?
I think we also need to balance to figure out different strategies where there is a lack of political will. Because that's the reality. It's not always the lack of capacity. Sometimes it's the lack of political will. And what is our strategy in that instance? So that's more a question than a solution that I have.
Thank you. Neeti?
Thanks, Waqas. I'm going to reinforce what I said. Design with women and gender diverse individuals at the heart of our efforts. Design keeping communities that we want to serve at the heart of our efforts. Our interventions need to be designed for and serve the communities that we want to. Digital development cannot happen in silos. It has to respond to actual socio-economic, cultural issues, social priorities. And thus development has to be equitable. And, the question of gender is such an intersecting, cross-cutting issue that it lies, at the intersecting realities of all of our efforts within, different social realities. And finally, collectivize impact. I think governments, the private sector, technical organizations like mine, civil society, community-based organizations, academics, experts, we all need to work together to be able to address and make sure that communities don't actually get left behind.
Thank you. Wonderful message. Ruzan?
I'll keep it short and sweet as well. I think collaboration is key to ensuring that we're able to mitigate risk online as much as possible for women, as well as other, vulnerable communities. And I do think continuing conversation to ensure that, all of us are on the same page in terms of protections is really important. And, I do want to say that we're the first to admit again that we are not perfect. It's an ongoing process, and, we hope that our capabilities are able to improve as much as possible. Thank you.
Right, and I see Secretariat's message to me saying 1 minute. I'd like to have the government the last word. So Malahat, please.
Yes, just a quick one. I would say that let's not make inclusion just a policy goal, but we have to take it as a shared national responsibility where everybody's included and everybody's playing its role. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all my panelists. Thank you for all of you for listening. And we just hope that, with all of this discussion, we have been able to inspire some ideas with you and some more motivation and dedication to work on this issue, and make sure that all digital inclusion is all inclusive. So thank you so much, and yeah, enjoy the APrIGF.
Thank you, Waqas and everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Waqas.